everyone, and welcome back to the Information Bottleneck podcast. And today we have a very special guest, Niloofar. She is an incoming assistant professor at CMU and a member of the technical staff at Humans End. Hi, Niloofar. How are you?
Hi, good. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you that you came. Hey, Ellen.
Hi, Ravid. Hi, Niloofar. It's a pleasure to have you on the show with us. And, privacy and the things that I think we're going to talk about are definitely one of the less well understood parts of machine learning among the community and certainly among lay people. So I'd love to get started.
Yeah, so maybe let's start with some recent news, and of course the last model of OpenAI, right? GPT 5.2 just released a few days ago. Did you try it already?
Played with it a little. And I still personally, for writing and tone of writing, prefer Opus. Controversial. I know like a lot of people really like ChatGPT, but I still prefer Claude. But I think for getting things done and create like not creativity but novelty of proposing things that surprise me, it was definitely much better. So still TBD if how much more I would rely on it, but yeah, I think it was much better than before, or what I actually expected. So
Yeah, I've tried it as well, and I again bought the $200 subscription, and so used all the versions. My wife's actually happy because she uses the pro version of these models quite a bit. So I just have a few notes. One of them is deep research continues to languish and not significantly be improved upon. So for example, you'll see on some queries where the pro thinking mode will actually take longer than deep research. But if you look at the behavior of how deep research operates, that's 9 times out of 10 what I want in terms of really grounded, correct claims, kind of more advanced RAG like agent workflow. And I always felt that OpenAI's implementation of it was a little better than Google's. So then, these new models come out. And there's a few updates that caught my eye too, from a technical perspective beyond just the kind of user experience, which was honestly not terribly different to me from 5.1. The pre-training or the data cutoff point, as they call it, was updated to like August of 2025. Now, I claim this is a mirage. I haven't tested it super extensively, but nowhere are they telling us what percentage of the pre-training data comes from what years or what months. And so until I see evidence that they didn't add 0.5% or something of it from that year, and maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I'm being doomer here, not doomer, but very pessimistic. But I think that's such an important update, right? And then they talk also heavily about their context window size, and supposedly being able to handle long context better. And then they talk a lot about token efficiency to try to justify why they raised prices considerably. But given that I don't think that this model was a new pre-training and possibly even a new model size, I think that they just snuck in we have to be more profitable now price raise along with what is fundamentally a slightly different, post-training type thing. So I don't know. It's just my
question. Sorry, finish the thought. I thought you were over.
No, I'm done.
Why does the cutoff matter anymore to you? Because right now, you also mentioned the RAG is good, and I think when the RAG is good enough, really a month, 2 months, or even a year of cutoff does not matter that much, because if the model can grab good data and mix it well, it's all context engineering at this point, right? So why does the cutoff even matter?
Several reasons. I guess the primary one is that when you're thinking about coding, right, if the model already trained on the entire code base and the entire internet, its intuition about how to handle and write code using a framework is often a lot better than poorly or imperfectly embedding either the parts of the framework documentation you think you need or all of it and diluting your context. But I totally concede that clever context engineering in a research workflow, or in an agentic like RAG workflow can probably get you nearly all of the way there.
Hmm. This still okay. This is I don't know. This is something that I actually think about a lot of how much models use their parametric memory versus context memory and when which one takes over. And I'm curious if you guys have opinions on it. Because one thing I've realized, just even from R1, was that the models that have reasoning enabled, they're actually much better and they rely more on their context and what you feed to them than their internal knowledge. Like one thing that R1 even like an open source model does is if you tell it that the capital of Sweden is Copenhagen, it's gonna be like, oh, but it isn't. But I'm gonna just pretend it is and move on from it. So there's this famous example. There's this example in I think Shiva Reddy's paper that they do this, and the model just rolls with that, and it pretends that this is the actual knowledge and just produces an output. And I think non-oral models or non-reasoning models would not do that. They would rely more on their parametric knowledge. So this is why I think the effect is less. But there is a caveat. Again, what I've seen is if the information is out of domain, like if you define which goes to your coding point, if you define a new task. So again, in the same paper, one cute experiment they had was that in a very separate chapter was they did this task of having the model generate ASCII dog faces. And because this was not in the training data, the model had to kind of figure it out in its reasoning chain. And it actually figures it out in context, but then it just forgets it again and produces like wrong outputs. So although it solves the task, it forgets it, it doesn't rely. So it's very interesting to me. Like one research question I think about is when is this, relying on parametric versus, context knowledge when it takes over? And I think one heuristic I've come to see is that, yeah, if it's still within domain, like maybe with language and news and stuff, it can rely on context. But you're right, if it's a new framework, I think it will actually rely more on its internal knowledge, which means that even if you put all the documentation in context, it probably won't learn a new programming language. But I think that's a good research question. That's what we should think.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
real quick on the dog thing, I think tokenization is probably responsible a bit for some of the issues with outputs.
Yeah, but I mean, it figured it out actually. So they have this cute examples. Like the model figures out the right dog and rolls with it, but then at the end, it kind of changes its mind and just veers off again. So it does get it right at some point. Sorry, Ravi, you were saying something.
No. I think like Ellen thinks that all the problems are related to tokenizations. Then, um,
I will die on that hill.
Yeah, I will also die on that hill.
yeah. I agree. But I think I think at the end this problem is like maybe the problem or like one of the most important problem today, right? Because like if you think about it like more broadly, it's not even what is the question, what is the answer, what is like in theory what is the right answer here, right? How we managed, right? Because in principle, you want that some of the information will be in the weight, some of the information will be in the context, and you will have some clever mechanism to update the weights and to learn from experience online, right? Incremental learning, all these things. But in other hands, you don't want that like the context will shift you from I don't know from your pre-train weight. So it's much more complicated than just let's pre-train and let's put everything in the context after it. And it's not clear like what we actually want to do, right? Do we want to store the information inside a weight? Do we want to just to try to separate between I don't know mechanism and the real facts? I don't know, probably not, because you want to learn something, you want to update things based on facts, for example, right? Like you don't want just like external memory mechanism that will just be there and will not update your internal system. So yeah, it's a good question. I think like probably the solution would be mix of everything, right? Like you will have some memory that will update over time, and this memory will update your weights, and then like your weights will update the memory, and you will do it also during inference, and you will do it from time to time. You need to do some cleaning and like more substantial updates of your model.
So I just want to quickly point out there is a user interface, like a user experience side to this, where I'm often asking the model for like business or marketing opinion things, mostly in the context of like trying to buy products or understand product categories. And every time I'm doing this on any non-open source model, open source where I'm like controlling things and turning RAG off by default, I tell the model, don't go on the internet. Don't search anything. Tell me using your parametered weights to tell me given your knowledge of everything else. And so I do think that parameterized knowledge is in a sense superior in that just in the sense that every token you spend in context both literally costs money and dilutes every other token. So I view it as something to be minimized ideally, and I guess OpenAI does because they're telling you, oh, but you save money now because we raised the prices, but you spend so many less tokens, allegedly, right, to solve the problems.
Wait, but why? I'm not sure. Like, why want that the model will not use the internet?
Well, in this case, right, it will go and search a bunch of marketing stuff that from the corporate websites that might not be related to what the actual answer is objectively. That's the very first problem. And so SEO, the very fact that like SEO exists and works for AI, there's a paper that says the concept of AI optimization doesn't work like as a separate thing, but AI is really good at SEO. So that
Why it's not a problem also for the pre-training? It's also a problem
uh
there.
so the basically Reddit and the other communities that were at least at 2022 and before, like nearly all humans and considerably more authentic, has had much more strong like strength in the pre-training data. And I'm pretty sure that like SEO style blog spam and stuff was like actually filtered for training data. That's why.
But why? Like, it can be just, I don't know, try to go to, like, I don't know, the internet, like the website 3 years ago, 4 years ago of this company, right? That will say that this product or like previous versions of this product are so great and blah blah blah.
Yeah. I mean, I acknowledge. I mean that's just like the argument for like making your pre-training data cutoff longer, right? Or like closer to now.
Still,
Actually, I know that I was the one who raised this issue of it doesn't matter. But now that you mentioned products, I just remember that something that happened to me this week, which now I kind of agree with you, is I was trying to find books similar to a certain book, but similar in spirit, like in a very deep level. That when you go on Goodreads, you see people liking, and these books have even not nothing semantically in common, but other people like them. I was looking for something like that. So I was thinking that, oh, if I, and but the book was so niche that Goodreads didn't really have that much on it. So I was like, let me go and, ask, thinking like the thinking like ChatGPT thinking, not the deep research, but the middle one, like kind of thinking. And then what it does is, I think sometimes when it does rely on search, it does a very shallow, like it doesn't use deep representations or something. So it just shallow. It found some other illustrated books that like had it, and it didn't work. And I feel like if it had used some deeper internal representation, and it would have made better connections as opposed to just doing this shallow search and now getting completely biased by the fact that it was like, oh, the author is a Scandinavian, so I'm just going to give you other like Scandinavian picture books. So I don't know. It was not at all what I wanted. And no matter how much I tried, I couldn't fix it. And then I was like, okay, turn off the search, and this is the vibe. Like, what other genres of books would I like? And then it gave me some books on like Atlas Obscura and stuff like that that was like more similar. So I can see, but I think this is maybe an engineering and product problem and not necessarily, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways,
No, I was just agreeing. Yeah, you're totally right. Totally a product problem.
yeah.
yeah, but it looked at like OpenAI like didn't like, right. They wanted to make like to sell products, right, to give you ads for different products, and it looked at they are not doing it for now.
That's part of the code red. They need to
Yeah,
monetize
yeah. I don't
or
know.
like
Is there some deadline for the code red, or like this is something from now till they will success to deliver something much better. Do you know?
Semi-analysis was speculating that it was supposed to be until they get a new pre-training checkpoint out. That was the theory and the hope Wall Street had.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, I think like so. I think it's very I don't know. It's very interesting, like how these models, like how tools actually affect, right? And then search over the internet is a tool, right? And when we start to train these models with tools, it's not only that they are actually understand how to use these tools, right? It's also affect their ability in other maybe unrelated problems, like they change their behavior. And I don't think like we actually know how it changed their behavior, right? It's not just they're using these tools and everything is okay, right? So we have very complicated situation, or very complicated multi stage problem, and I don't think we have a solution now.
Yeah, and like speaking of tool use and just how it affects other behaviors, one thing that I'm thinking about a lot and I'm trying to talk to people about is how hard sciences use tools, and like how scientists, how much I've been mostly talking to material scientists and chemists, but OpenAI put out this what was the article, like I think it was a month ago. They put out this paper. It was called Advances in Sciences with GPT-5 or something like that. Where I really like that paper. If you haven't read it, you should read it because it's more like a storybook. I actually like how it's written because it has different chapters of different scientists. It has things about black holes. I think even like drug discovery. So there's different types of scientists from different math, and then they try to solve a problem, and you have all the prompts and all the responses, and you kind of have a commentary. I'll send the paper if you can't find it. You have a commentary from the scientists of what they tried and then how it worked and how it didn't. And obviously, the narrative is that the model is really helpful, right? But the good thing is they do put the failure cases in there, which makes it interesting, like the things that they tried and didn't work, and then how you bring the experts into the loop to make it work. I think this is valuable from multiple perspectives. The paper got some attention, but not much. But I think it opens the door to a lot of research. So one thing is in terms of worker upskilling and expertise upskilling, like you kind of always need this human in the loop. So it's good to build, like instead of building the model and optimizing for autonomy, how can we optimize to better use the human in the loop so that it's less cognitive load for the human to have to proactively detect what's going on versus you can actually tell them what they should look at. And then from another side, it's interesting because you get to see where the model failure points lie now. And one interesting part of it was there was this black hole symmetry problem thing, which was like apparently a simple problem. And then they asked the model, and the model just gives a really like a wrong answer that is very obvious. Like it obviously didn't do the work, but it pretended it did the work and like, oh, there's no symmetry, whatever. But then what the scientist does is he or she only treats it like a student. It's like, oh, let's just simplify this problem. So at first it makes the model solve another problem, and then it asks it this problem, and now the model actually does the analysis. So instead of shortcutting, now that it did the simple primer, it actually goes and does the real analysis, which to me is interesting. And it's kind of like from a model behavior perspective, and just like having thinking a lot about memorization, I was thinking that this has to do with hallucinations too, right? Like models sometimes hallucinate because they have the internal knowledge, but there is like a conflict of knowledge, and some knowledge is overshadowing another one. But if you kind of like, if it's predicting a next word, maybe one little token has higher probability than another. Maybe if you remove that, then the true thing comes up. And I was just thinking of how you can maybe do this by default so that, you don't have to have an expert look at this and realize it's wrong and then come up with another prompt. I don't know. That part was interesting. In general, the paper had a lot of interesting things in it. But I feel like there is a lot of interesting technical things to take away of how you can improve models using that. And I think tokenization was also another thing that was like, you can see that it causes a lot of problem in sciences. So yeah, I think that I want to give a shout out to that paper. That was a really good paper.
Yeah, I think like we talk a lot about like if if models now have like can discover new knowledge or new information and things like that. And in math, right, it can discover like solutions for old problems that no one knows and things like that. But I must say that like I don't think it really matters, right? Like I think that at least today, like the most valuable part here or the most useful part is that you can actually use them, and like the question is how we actually use them in order to solve problems, right? And so one example is to just retrieve knowledge, right? To retrieve all the problems that are similar to our problem that people solve in different ways, or like summarize the ways that they are solving it. And I think this is especially true for natural sciences, right? That you have so many I don't know, solutions for problem, and so much information that's spread over the world, and it's almost impossible to understand how to use it, right? Like you can spend years over years in just to understand what people have done, and I think today language models can actually do it almost for free, right? And in no time, basically. Um,
Yeah, but you still need the expert, which is I don't know. There's another person. There's this professor at CMU. His name is John Kitchen. He does this thing where he records himself using the agentic tools and like how he uses them to like solve chemistry problems. And it was I was just watching it just to see because again in my head it's like okay, you make a bunch of tool calls, like what could go wrong? And then as he was doing it, there was this funny thing where he just typed something and then the model asked like, oh, what tool do you want to use for this? So he still had to make design choices, and he was like, oh, use this tool. And I'm like, what is the difference between this I don't know. And then it uses it, and then the model gives a response, and then suddenly, as if he's a fortune teller, he's like, no, it's doing this thing where it didn't really run it. And then he tells them all to go run it again. Apparently, the model sometimes doesn't do the tool call, but pretends it called a tool. And he only realizes this based on the runtime. Like, there's no difference in the model output. And I asked him, I was like, how do you know? He said, I just know it by now. That was insane. Or like another thing is sometimes they just dump like papers in the context, like PDFs, and it's like, run this formula or like this functional group or whatever. And then he was just like typing it, the model gave a response, it was reasonable, and then suddenly he was like, oh, it has reversed E and V when it tokenized. So now the whole formula was reversed. And again, if an expert wasn't looking, you wouldn't know. And I don't know, it's just I think there are so many problems like this that we can be solving and we're not. But then we're doing these random things that maybe don't matter. Like I think there's this yeah, disconnect.
I just have to quickly jump in and point out that structured and constrained generation, in this case, the forcing tool calls, like tool call equals required or strict in the API for OpenAI, is how you can force the model to actually call the tool you want it to and control this explicitly. And that workflows, like agent workflows, right, which is like a limited agent, like deep research is my favorite workflow, do huge amounts of usage of that like strict explicitness about when tool calls are going to happen. And I claim that for building like deep chemist, for example, and
Yeah.
trying to mock what they're doing, and even to build a good product aimed at somebody like that professor, that feature should be used or made easy for them to leverage in their own workflow.
Yeah.
Like I am such a massive like I'm so convinced that agents aren't that great, and that you will constantly experience these kind of problems without being like, no, you are calling that tool, like you will, like that kind of like guarantees. That's guardrails in my mind too, also for model behavior. The same technology for like masking, zeroing out log probs. It's all.
do you, but do you think like for the long term we'll see right the deep research, for example? Do you think that like we will see something like that, like will be the separate models that will do deep research for you? Because it was a big promise, I don't know, a year ago, whatever they released it, but now it looks like there you have very specific use cases that you actually need it, right? Like you need a report with very long, maybe for consulting jobs. But besides that, like, it's not really helpful, right? For 99% of the day-to-day use cases, like, why to do it?
I do
Well,
agree. Deep research is not that. Sorry, go on, go on, go on.
no, you go, you go.
No, I totally agree. It gives this long report of all these like it's actually not useful. Like I no I think the exploration exploitation trade-off is a bit off. It goes super deep in one thing. At the beginning it was actually more sprawled. Like I want something that is sprawled. I think latent reasoning. We need to make latent reasoning happen better. I think if the model was searching in a latent space, that is modulated with some weird KL thing, it would jump into other things. Like maybe what I want is actually an astronomy paper that does, but it just zooms in on this one thing and goes deep, which is getting less and less useful. I think even yeah, I feel like the deep research has been getting. I've stopped using it. You're right. I'm not even using it that much anymore.
So that behavior, by the way, of it getting less useful, it's because OpenAI likes to occasionally quietly nerf products, and they did nerf it because it's extremely token expensive. And it used to be able to use GPT 4.5, which was their last attempt at a real upgrade on the pre-training, but that was a super expensive model for them to host. So exactly like your personal experience is like what happened. And so if you pay for the pro version, deep research gets a bit better again. They advertise this, and I can verify that that's the case. But I'm, as you said,
Pro version, but I still don't like it.
yeah, and I have my problems too, where Google searches even more things, but I find that they're even less good with their feature, even with Gemini 3. But yeah, it's funny that because I am a consultant, I live and die by even this more limited version of deep research, and indeed I'm so heavily influenced by it in terms of design choices because I have my own like persuasive debate system that I call Deep Debater, which is implemented in what I imagine is a very similar way to how deep research is. But yeah, I mean, today now the pro thinking high mode often spends more total tokens on a problem. But I will just go quickly back up and also say that, yeah, maybe you have to like remove citations and markdown and all that, but it writes better in deep research. It uses less EM dashes. It uses less, it's not X, it's Y. I claim the post training for it was less sloppy. So I can
Great.
write like marketing prose pretty well.
Yeah, I think like it's a good point to ask. So there are rumors that OpenAI actually like they doesn't success to make a good a new pre-training runs, and they heavily based on the Anto 4.5, right, something like that, and they shift everything to post-training, to RL, to all these things, compared to Gemini that they have basically great pre-training. They see that they can get more data, they can get like synthetic data from different sources, and they are heavily investigating and based on pre-training. What do you think? What is a better bet, pre-training or post-training, Niloofar?
Hmm. Yeah, I'm thinking.
You
Uh,
you can say both. That's fine. Why not to do both?
no, I really think it matters who you're targeting. I think this is gonna sound bad, like for the lay user, you probably want to do more post training. But I think for research science, more savvy users, pre training is a better bet because pre training will still enrich the model representations better. And also another thing that I personally like, again, a hill I'm dying on is I really feel bad about cultures that are non-Western and languages that are not English. And people often underestimate how bad the models are in those fields and overestimate how well post-training kind of post-training or synthetic translation data is gonna fix things. Like they really over rely on this transfer, which does not really happen. And every time I use any of these models in Farsi, I get really mad because it's like obviously dumb. I'm like, if one person had tested this, they would have realized all the things that are wrong. And it's worse for mid-resource languages because still people use them. Like it's not that bad that no one will just use it. It's like you have to take this pain every day. And I think these things are actually fixed if you change the pre-training and mid-training to properly learn these languages better. And I mean, the same goes for science, right? If you put better books and if you parse the books better, you parse the science better, fix the tokenization, then you have better discovery. Like the model will connect things more. Because in my head, again, discovery is connecting random things. Like all the cool papers you read connects them. This is why like interdisciplinary researchers, like physics researchers, are better ML researchers. It's because you have a different model, and that is creativity. And I think post training is only going to sharpen things, and it's not going to be creative, but it might be more helpful in one field, which means better for lay users, worse for like creation. But I don't know. That might be a narrow take. Yeah.
No, it's a great take, and I want to quickly observe a few things. One, well, first, a quick question for you: when you're testing with Farsi, are you doing it in the native script?
I've tried many things. Like, if you're actually interested in this, there's this funny stuff. I also go on Twitter in Farsi just to see how the models are stupid because people talk about it. One funny thing that was happening. This was early ChatGPT days, like a year ago, like a year and a half ago, and people were like lay people were starting to use it, and there was this thing that someone posted that they asked that, like, it was a consultant manager kind of person in Farsi for the model to come up with this program for like some work thing. And the model literally goes and says, let me think about it for a few days and I will get back to you. And people don't know that this is not a thing. This deep thinking also didn't exist. Like nothing existed back then. So people don't know this. And then this person came back in 3 days and he's like, okay, what happened? And the person said, no, this is like a really tough problem. I need more time. And obviously the model would never ping you. And at first I thought this is a troll. And then I checked and no, more people were seeing this. And I checked with also like some of my OpenAI friends and I was like, is this like a thing? Like, what is this? And they were like, no, like, we don't know what this is. And then I just like searched Farsi, like I did like a search in the pre-training Farsi data, like on open source data sets. So one thing that we Iranians do as a nation is when we don't want to do something, we're like, I'll do it in a few days or whatever. And this was in the pre-training data of like, all these, because they don't use books because Farsi books are not really available. They were using forum data, and there was a lot of this thing in there, so the model had just picked it up. And there's so much behavior like this where the model, like this is one example, but like you can skew the model behavior so easily with just random things. One thing that bothers me is sometimes it makes up traditions or it says that a tradition doesn't exist. Because some of my friends were trying to throw me a Persian birthday party, and then they bring the cake and everything, and there's no candles. And I was like, guys, like, what happened with I mean, thank you for surprising me, but where's the candles? Like, I was very, and they said, oh no, ChatGPT said in Iran it's bad luck to blow candles. And this was like a month ago, and I was like, no, we do it all the time. And you can completely obliterate a culture like this because people a lot of times they believe ChatGPT over me. Like sometimes I say in Iran we do this and they ask ChatGPT and it says no. And people believe ChatGPT over me. Maybe that's because I also troll people a lot, but still. So these are the things that I like, annoy me. It's like you can skew them all easily or it makes up traditions or obliterate traditions. And okay, I'll stop. But that is
No.
what.
This was great, and so I'll lead into a few notes because this was so good. First of all, you already mentioned tokenization, but I know that Farsi in the native script spends insane amounts of token. Like it's like the worst or among the worst, like up there with like Burmese, where it's like 30 tokens per symbol, right? And
Yeah.
that whenever you spend so many tokens, your representations are horrible for in terms of correctly representing. So you get like a unique struggle with Farsi, I think, even more so than some other heavily anglicized languages. And then you also get geopolitical considerations, right? So like Iran probably has significant amounts of its own text that's not on those like forums, that's on intranets that are not like publicly available due to like US sanctions and internal government drama like this. And then finally, you start talking about, like linguistic colonialism. And I'm especially influenced by, I feel like right before ChatGPT came out, the field was having a turn to really try to do something about the like extreme anglicization and English focus in like training data. And I feel like we turned away from that like movement. I was really influenced by like Stephen Bird. He's like out in Australia where he like lived in like not I don't know where, but he went and lived with some native or Australian tribes and tried to preserve their languages basically by writing down these like
Yeah.
about to die languages so that way that they could continue on even if the native speakers were dying out. And this is especially important because when we talk linguistic colonialism, to be clear, it already happened. Like ChatGPT came out, and there's papers that show that because everybody reads ChatGPT stuff all the time, everywhere, all day, and it's all over the internet. Monkey see, monkey do. It influences English spoken human communication. So now everybody says it's not X, it's Y phrases all the time. They type EM dashes. People unironically use semicolons way more. So it linguistically colonized us. The post-training data set people were essentially the Benny Gestalt. What's the name of them from Dune? Right? They like accidentally like colonize society. And I played a video game about this called Metal Gear Solid 5, where the main character, or like the enemy character you're trying to fight against, Skullface, is trying to make a virus that infects English, and that happened. So when we talk about like, are we going to erase other languages? I mean, as crappy as it is, I think the answer is that AI has massively accelerated like the demise of low resource, low languages throughout the world, and furthermore just takes all the problems of like historical linguistic colonialism and makes them worse in ways that are like just like math being really frustrating for you. And I'll give one final analogy here. There was an early experiment. I like lipstick on a pig attempts to debias word embeddings, masks the harm rather than actually removing it. It's a bit of an older paper, one of the more depressing papers. Yoav Goldberg, I think, wrote that. But when you look at that, and I think the previous papers looking at like why did word embeddings get like sexist representations, the reason is there are so many more Wikipedia articles about male computer scientists, like with male names, talking about like their dads, right, than there are about like female computer scientists. It's like a representation gap. It's not like Wikipedia had a bunch of sexist articles per se, right? Like, and so this is where we really we need something to get off of English. I will say, one further PS. There is one silver lining, which is on audio data. I have a friend of mine who's like Vietnamese, and he's been telling me that Grok's audio can very effectively do accents across the different languages. So even if it's like screwing up the actual translations, it sounds like it was from somebody who came from the country. So
I should try it.
So in Hebrew, it's so funny. In Hebrew, so ChatGPT, like if you're talking with him, he has like an American accent, like of like a American, Jewish American guy from New York that like he has the exact accent, and it's so weird. Like white will be like that, right? So, but I think. I don't know. It's a good question, but I don't think like there is again like you need to ask yourself, right? And if the society is, I don't know, racist or biased to some direction, do we need to fix it in these models? Like, do we want to fix it, or because this is the data, right? At the end, the data is biased. Do we want to fix it, or do we want to reflect it? And it was the same question all the time, right? In machine learning.
I actually, I'm on the. This is funny, because you mentioned the Yoav Goldberg. That's the null something paper. I think Yanai was the first author of that paper, Yanai Elazar. And then Yanai had other papers in similar with, oh God, I forget this. Okay, anyways, there's, yeah. So when I was doing my PhD proposal or defense or something, I had some debiasing papers as well. And one of the members in my committee, he was asking, he was like, do you really want to fix it, or like do you want the model to know so that later on you actually like this is a representation of the society, right? Like you kind of want to know that. And that got me thinking a lot about this question. And now I also agree. I think not that you don't want to fix it. I don't like solutions to these problems that are removing things from pre-training data. And this even goes for privacy, which I do a lot of. And a lot of people like, I don't like unlearning. I don't like scrub the data of all, okay, maybe if there's SSS or like something you don't want to, but just scrubbing the data, removing things from pre-training data, removing bias from, I actually think all of those are wrong. You really need to let the model learn everything as it should, like build the best representation of the world of humanity. And then based on what you want to do, you can have the post-training or decoding time algorithms. Like you're in the EU, the model should not do this. We will constrain decode in this way. Or like, right now you want to I'm a very huge fan of this. And when people hear like a privacy person say, oh, you want to put everything in your pre-training data, I would guarantee that no private data from pre-training will ever regurgitate from a model. I will actually die on this hill. People should stop worrying about memorization. This annoys the hell out of me because everyone thinks that privacy is memorization, and it's so not that anymore. It's not like there are many new problems, but also memorization is not a problem anymore. It's not that, oh, we worked on it too much. It's just stop working on memorization privacy, especially on pre-training data, because you will never see a regurgitation. The data gets so diluted that having someone's SSN appear 3 times, it's extremely unlikely. And privacy is all about plausible deniability. Even if it does produce my SSN, it would have produced 50, 100,000 SSNs before me. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so I agree with you.
No, it's like asking, for example, when you raise a kid, right? So you can ban the, I don't know, to watch, you can ban him to watch something, right? Violence or something like that. Or you can sit with him and explain him like why it's bad and what are the bad parts and how can we, I don't know, think about it and let's talk about it. Um,
Well, I want to
but
point out there's a few things. There's the Platonic representation hypothesis paper, which shows, train on bad code, now your model's willing to be evil. And I this is why I do worry a little bit about the whole like Grok approach of, okay, we're gonna put 4chan in the pre-training data now and all this to make it unhinged. I do think that models can't like and even the idea that like since models will be used so much and we really do have a certain ability to engineer the human soul, to quote Stalin, right, because that's how Marxists have seen themselves is historically, right, that we do have a chance to eradicate some of the worst base instincts from people, in particular instincts towards domination, and particularly like the isms, right, the racism, sexism, and most other forms of that. And furthermore, most things that get talked about in those terms, because I completely agree, like we should not be deleting data. Like first of all, outliers are good, right? So they add information and entropy. But we can do things like, and a trivial example in my mind is you could go through all those Wikipedia articles about a male computer scientist. And I don't know how you would do this in a way where you're like trying to tell the model this isn't real, right? But it's like hypothetical, right? Like a hypothetical, like what's the female version of this? And so it's like, trying, I don't, maybe this is bad in its own way, right? Maybe it's like overthinking or upsampling, or maybe there's like upweighting the samples in a classical sense during at learning time, which is probably much more elegant, right? But I just see this as being um something where we should not like abrogate it and just let, because if you let AI learn from the human's worst base instincts, I mean, remember like how the books about how like the IBM helped, and maybe I shouldn't deploy this example, but IBM in private industry is absolutely implicated in the worst types of like genocide, right? And so I worry very heavily about like radical harm coming from future AI systems where we didn't go into the pre-training data and be like, okay, no 4chan, no like torture stuff, like you know, like removing the really ugly stuff. And even from a memorization standpoint, right? Like I don't I completely agree that like we don't have to worry about exact regurgitation, but approximate regurgitation is bad. So like even if the exact military secret that somebody leaked on War Thunder forums or on Discord that nobody found for 6 months is like diluted, the thought process and hypothetical kind of secrets implies to me that I could take a model like DeepSeek, mine it by hitting it with like 100,000 queries, just trying to figure out what's surfacing when I ask it to role play as a minister of state security and be like, okay, this is probably what they're going to do. And interpret this as like an attack on a whole society, not society, you know, like an adversarial way to potentially get in the mind of an enemy country in a sense, if you're thinking in those terms, right? So I'm very worried about approximate memorization.
Okay, I have thoughts on this. I want to let Ravid go though, because we've been talking a lot, and then I have thoughts on approximate memorization.
No, I think like I agree with you. I think like we should just put everything in the pre-training, and if you want to, you know, to remove some of the things after it, let's make specific processes how to write, how to make sure that people will not use it in a, yeah, I don't know, in some bad to understand some secrets or something like that. I think at the end, memorization is not a problem in current or like in modern uh, models. And I also think that at the end, we need to understand that like we can find everything in the internet, right? Like people can find everything in the internet. What model can find, people also can find. So we need to limit, or we need to punish the use cases. Like we need to punish the actual actions of these bad behaviors, if you want. And we need to punish the people that are doing it, or I don't know, companies that are doing it, but not to try to prevent everything, and not to try to understand what can be harmful and what can be not, because it's very situation dependent, right? Like some cases, in some situations, this knowledge and this information, it's good and it's helpful for society. Even it's something that we want to encourage. But in some other situations, we don't want it, and we want to make sure that no one will do it. So we need to push it farther in the action process.
Yeah, I want to double click on two things here, because there are two issues that kind of got conflated, that at least like I've thought and done research on. One is the approximate memorization and in general memorization. So the statement I made about, you know, private data or negative data not being regurgitated. The thing is, if a data point, and there's a lot of body of research that shows this, if a data point appears in a data, and like by data point you can think of it as a concept, you can think of it as a 50-gram, right? Different levels of abstraction of what an utterance or a sequence could be. If that sequence appears less than 10 times in a pre-training corpus, I'm just assuming like, you know, normal, like let's say even pile style pre-training corpus, there is no way that it leaves a strong enough imprint for it to be detected in any way. And by detected, I mean like a membership inference attack, which is basically the one bit of was this there or not. This is like, you know, this is the upper bound of what you can get about something. And if the membership inference fails, you cannot detect anything else. Like if you cannot detect the one bit of was this sequence in there or not, you cannot get a concept out of it, right? So this is one issue, is that if it appears few times, it's not going to leave any imprint, and it's not going to impact anything else, the representations even or whatnot. But the issue with like propaganda or 4chan stuff, the thing is, if it is a propaganda that is common enough, that appeared so many times, then you can have full regurgitation, or you can have the approximate stuff. So then it's a different thing, right? Then it has to have appeared many times, and then it becomes different because now the model has an understanding of it. And when the model understands it, then you can actually use the model to kind of, you know, figure it out, and you can detect it, and then you can try and figure out post hoc suppressions. So that's one issue that is different. So even if something really, really bad exists in 4chan, if it exists like 2-3 times, you cannot really approximate decode it either. So that's one thing. But then the second thing of you know, of fixing this by upsampling. I actually think that the way we've been doing things wrong, I don't know what the right thing is. I'm not a modeling like optimization person, but with privacy also this is the case. We show the model this is an SSN, and then we say don't produce an SSN. But the model has no mapping of what an SSN is not. So I think the whole problem in the way we model things is we define the probability distribution over what is in a directive way, and we don't really define what the probability mass should look like for inhibition. Like, what is not an SSN? The model has never really seen a mapping, what it means to not share an SSN. And that is one problem, right? And it's the same. It's like you don't want the model to be biased. Like, instead of upsampling or downsampling something, you kind of have to let it understand that what you're showing it is defining 50% of the probability mass, and the rest of it maybe make it be uniform, right? So that's the thing. I think models are really bad at understanding that there is other things that is not what they're modeling, and understanding that they're only modeling a conditional part of the universe. Sorry, that's my whole spiel. But I see this a lot in different things.
Yeah, you shouldn't like don't understand what does it mean not to, or like the opposite, because it's quite common, right? In the text, or like when we talk with each other, things like that. I'm sure that the internet is full of examples of like to say, I don't know, this is not like that, or this is not like that, right? I would assume that they can understand something easy. Do you know about about studies that actually check it?
No, not really. There's this, the reversal curse paper, or like there's a couple papers like that, but I don't think it's the same thing. One paper, I think it was from Daphne, the diffuse probabilities paper. They tried, I think they were showing that, like if you ask a model, I don't think it was exactly this, but like if you ask a model, what is the probability distribution of like tossing a fair coin, it would say 50-50. But then when you tell it to toss a coin, it's like 80%, right? And so they tried to come up with like this, both a loss function and a data distribution that like diffuses the probabilities, so that now, and then they show that models become more creative and novel and stuff, and you do this, and but I've never seen it really done for negation. So yeah, that's one thing that I think is really missing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pink elephant problem, right? And so, you put it in the context that's in context learning, right? And when you don't want it.
Yeah, but this is probably why you want to separate between the generation process and the thinking process, right? Uh, and if you will do it, then everything is fine. Like the model can think about the pink elephant, but it doesn't have to generate the pink elephant. This is we have each episode we have like we must insert JEPA ideas. So like this is
This is a joke.
yeah. Yeah, but okay. So privacy, but privacy can be a lot of different problems, right? What kind of problems do you study, or like do you are interesting for
Yeah,
you?
I've done the whole, gauntlet of like different things, because I did memorization for the longest, and I did some differential privacy. But I think what we should care about now more recently, and especially with models, like was the thing that Alan mentioned, that people can use the model to go search something in 4chan and then find it, and now it's easier than ever. That was a lot of privacy lawyers and like people in the privacy policy space were worried about this when deep research came out. And I also had the mentality, well, people could always Google. So how is it different? So I didn't really get this until I started. Okay, this is gonna sound, but using it to kind of fake stalk my friends and see what I can find. One of my friends came to me, and she's a dentist, and she's not tech savvy, and she said, "Can you deep research me? I want to see like what you find." And I told her, I was like, "Oh, this is just like whatever you have online." So we ran the deep research, and we did it in English for her name, and it gave a bunch of things. And then it asks you a question of like, "Oh, do you want personal information about this person or professional?" And then I did it another one, and I was like, "Okay, let's say personal." And the model says, "No, I won't do stalking, yada yada." So I was like, "You know what? I'm gonna do? I'm gonna ask this in Farsi." So I went and we did it in Farsi because she's Iranian, and then there was no guardrail. So the model goes and like does a whole sweep, and it comes back with my friend's pet cat name. And I was very surprised because the pet cat is not whiskers or anything. It's like this Persian herb that is not even common. And then I got very like and then I combed through her Instagram, everything, and I really could not find where this pet cat name came from. And it was like it really got to me. And then 2 days later, I realized it was embedded in an HTML tag on her professional website because the photo was cropped photo with her cat and the name was just there. So you would not see it, but if you do
Interesting.
inspect element, it was there.
Wait, how
Uh,
did you find it?
so back then, this was, I think it still does. Deep research would give you the link to where it got like attribution links, right? I had clicked the attribution link many times, but it wasn't there. But we were doing this on my phone. So, but then 2 days later, I was on my laptop and then it still opened it. And I was like, it's so weird that it's putting her professional dentistry website
Uh,
for the source. And then I just decided to inspect element it. And it was there. Yeah. And okay, so this goes to the fact that I think the things we should worry about more. One is this type of using models to do inference and aggregation. So inference is a bit different. Like right now, from my background, I think if you ask ChatGPT, it can actually give you like geolocate me quite well. So that's like models are really good at inference. If you give them one thing, they can infer so much from it. That's scary. Like that is one thing that really scares me. And I don't think models should not do it, but it's just that people should be aware that this could really happen. The other one is aggregation, which is like this. It goes to different sources and finds information and puts it together. This is bad, not just because it can facilitate stalking. Like with the pet cat name, that's a secondary question for many password recovery things, right? So if you can find someone's maiden name easily, then you can steal their password. So it has like a lot of ramifications like that. So I worry about that too. And then the third thing, which is actually the thing that I started worrying about first, was input output leakage. So like right now that everything is shoved in the context, we don't have the problem of memorization. Like your private data is all in this long context. And with agentic workflows, it can just flow to the wrong place. So like the model might send your password somewhere, or like, you ask them all to like plan a birthday surprise party, it might send an email to the person being like, oh, remember to go to your own surprise party, like things like that. So I think these are the three main
no, you
problems.
can. The problem is when he will send like emails for the one that didn't invite him.
But yeah, no, exactly. It does do that. So yeah, so these are the things that I think are way less studied and no one is working on them that much. And yeah, I think they could turn the world into like a bad place if people like start doing bad things with it.
But
Well, and
do you? Sorry, Anna.
oh, I was just gonna say mass surveillance is absolutely one of the scariest use
I
cases of
didn't want to say the word.
technology.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, and indeed, we humans are extremely easy to fingerprint. Or you need like 1 second of voice data to clone a voice. Humans are extremely easy to figure out, de-anonymize, even when they think they're anonymous, based on bigram, trigram analysis, let alone full on, neural net based techniques. And models, as you observed, are expert geoguessers, and similarly are super persuasive, not because they're expert debaters per se, but primarily because they adapt on the fly just from like one back forth prompt query, even sometimes based on subtleties that might be kind of scary to dwell on, to be like, oh, in ways, based on ways you typed, I could subtly increase my odds that you think a certain way, potentially, right?
No, exactly. It is really mind-boggling. Yeah, it worries me a lot with all the information that is shared, and especially for like kids and teenagers and online safety. Kind of, it's worrying. Yeah.
And okay, so but what do you think are the solutions are? Do you think like we can get good enough solutions for these problems?
One, yeah, okay. So, at least for the input output flow problem, which I think is the biggest thing, because that's the issue of contextual privacy, and it's the fact that the solution is not to not share that information. It's also a lot of people are like, oh, access control. If it's an SSN, only give access to this. Yes, for some clean cut things you can do it, but then if I tell the model, send an email to my boss saying that I need to take Wednesday off. And again, I want to give a short directive to the model. Like I wanted to go look at my calendar, see what time I need off. It's probably because like I have a doctor's appointment, whatever. With this thing, I don't want to have to, draw lines and be like, say this and this and this. If I wanted to do it, I would do it myself. Now the model has to figure out which boss is it? Is it like, my department chair? Is it like the person I work with? Like who is this person? So that's one thing. And then right now, if you do this with a model, it would either over or under generalize. It would either say, oh, I need to go to my therapy appointment, which is in this neighborhood at this time, so I won't be able to come to work. So it would overshare. And if you prompt it to be like, oh, be discreet, then it would just say, I need some time off on Wednesday. It won't actually say the time. Versus the right level of abstraction is, I want to say that, oh, I want Wednesday afternoon off, but I don't want it to say it's because I have therapy or like why I'm. So that's the thing. And I think good post-training, good reasoning, and then reasoning for privacy norms and all of that and how you go about doing it can actually be helpful here. Because a good agent, a good assistant is seamless, right? I actually want the agent to just have access to everything and make my life easier, as opposed to being like, no, don't access my calendar, but then it will need the so that's one thing. For the aggregation and inference problem, I also honestly don't really know what a good thing to do is there, like how you can create friction. Because you still want the model to have this knowledge and do it. It's really hard to define, oh, is this person using this data to like stalk someone? Or like, what they're going to do with it. So I think maybe there's more of a policy and outcome kind of situation there rather than, well, how we technically go about doing it. But I think raising awareness one way or another with people and just advocating for people to share less online in general is good. Data minimization techniques, kind of things like that. Maybe like we need more high school education. I don't know. But yeah, maybe that's something to do.
Yeah, like regarding the first issue, so we worked at one, and we worked on a personal assistance, and you have, and I think this is a very general problem, right? Like you have agents, they have different access, right? Access permissions, and you need to somehow to manage it. And this is a huge problem because, like, how you want to, like, are you going to give different agents different permissions, or like you want, for example, that like the same, right, the same person will have like the one agent that can, right, that you can schedule appointments with someone, and then it needs some permission, but it also wants to understand, like, for example, like what will be in these meetings, right? So we need different kinds of permissions, and sometimes you need, like, it's really really complicated how to manage these permissions. And at the end, I'm not sure we can actually, besides, very strict if else rules, I don't think we have the perfect solutions, because, like, even post training, right? Like, models can make mistakes. Like, we don't know, right? Hallucination is a great example, but there are so many ways that models can have these mistakes, and I'm not sure, like, we can have a solution for that. Um, this is something that we need to be aware that if you want to give a personal assistance, agentic personal assistance, you need to suffer, I don't know, once in 1000 cases, you will have these I don't know, information leaks, like it will post something that you don't want to, or things like that. And we need, I think, we as I don't know, researchers or developers, we need to reflect these risks to the customers, to the users, to the general public.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have anything else that you want to say, that you are excited about, or like you want to?
I think we can begin to wrap up, but just to like other things that I'm excited about and I'm getting into more in general, and I think it's good for, I don't know, like people to work on more, as I mentioned, is talking to experts in different fields and scientists and seeing how we can build models for them better. I'm trying to just like source a list of people who have very niche expertise that use models in a certain way and then how their life is painful. So this is material scientists, I've also come to see that there's people who work on kernel optimization, like GPU kernel optimization, and use LLMs, and that is also not super streamlined. So a lot of hardware level optimizations when you use LLMs, you can test it, but it's actually not like you still need the human in the loop. I'm trying to figure out how, because I would assume you could just have checks and make everything verifiable. Apparently that is not the case. And like there are these Discord groups where there's people who go over every kernel and verify it. So that is something I'm for now. I'm just looking to see what things are out there that have this problem. So I think it's good because again, people who are working on there's people who are interested in AI scientists and they're thinking of how you can use an AI to come up with a new idea and run experiments, and that's noble. But I think that's long term. People are building foundation models for chemistry and whatever. That's also good, but that's big. I think there are these tiny problems. Like every time I talk to computational chemists and like biology people, they have a bunch of tiny little problems that are not like engineering problems. It's actually kind of research problems that we can work on now, especially in academia, that are just, sitting there. So reach out to people. Astronomy people also have problems. So reach out to people in your departments, and there could be really cool, interesting like ML problems that they have.
Do you think this is like the future of academic research to come and like to try to identify, problems that you can't make money out of it and to try to solve it?
I think them can't make money. Like, OpenAI again really likes to be like, oh, we're building science. But in reality, they're not incentivized and they're really not doing it. They're building AI slop. So that's the thing. And yeah, I think things that don't have necessarily fast money value, it's like things that it's good to work on. And I think like these types of little problems here and there, and they are interesting, at least to me. So I think that's one thing. I think issues of mental health. So there's some grants right now on making models more aware of mental health. So the ethics of all of this, and then there's also other fields that are behind, like ambient AI and AI in hospitals, AI in places where you really can't necessarily use enterprise level models, so people host their own models locally. How can we build small, strong models for these use cases? Or how can we have something that I'm really bullish on is how can we have small local models collaborate with large enterprise large commercial models without sharing, like creating kind of these silos and just querying for general data and general strategy instead of sending the data and then rehydrating it locally. So things like this, building really good small models, are things that I'm also excited about. So yeah, I think I know that like I talked to a lot of academics and people, especially last year, people were kind of they were like, oh, all the cool stuff is happening in industry. I think this year, especially at NeurIPS, I felt less of that. I think people were still like, I saw more of cute little ideas. Like I saw papers, people training data on Veil, like trying to decode Veil language again. Whereas last year, everyone was either doing some RL, trying to do process reward models and reverse engineer reasoning, whatever. I think we're going back to just doing cool random research in academia, and I like that.
Yeah, I agree. I just think that like this is one of the reasons is that like the big industrial labs don't publish anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to be
Uh,
able to know what my dog's thinking. So please work on more weird problems, academia.
More of your problems, yes. And AI for education also. I think that's another thing. Like AI tutors. I know that people like some grifters are like building some of this stuff, but like I think there's actually the real good cockside research will probably happen in academia. So using AI to help students like still do cognitive work and learn, I think is a really important area of research, without like solving the problem for them.
Like, do you mean like what to make to implement actually in class, right? Like to how to use AI to that students can solve problems using AI, but still they will learn something meaningful and not only like copy paste from
Yeah, yeah,
ChatGPT.
yeah. Like building models that can actually help students who want to learn, like learn the process of thinking and learning, and not just giving them the, like teach me how to fish and not the fish kind of thing. Like, how can we build AI that does that? Because yeah, a lot of times it just gives you the solution, and I think like the same way that it's physical exercise, time under pressure is how you build muscle. With thinking, it's also the more time you spend in the suspense is when you learn. And I think a lot of chatbots take away the suspense. So how can we bring that? Like, how can we actually use them to create better suspense?
Very interesting. Okay, do you have anything that you want to add? Something that you want to sell?
Something I want, like an idea that I want to sell.
I know, idea, product, like whatever you want. We don't have any regulation.
I mean, in terms of in terms of papers and ideas, I think again more people should work on privacy, and like I think there's a lot that goes on into personalization and memory features, so work more on that. But in general, like in the I don't know, one thing that I'm really advocating for these days, and this has nothing to do with anything we discussed, is just health, physical and like nutritional health. And I think people really underestimate how much consistent small changes in your lifestyle and in the food you eat actually changes how you live. Personally, I've not had good health in my life. So lately I've started engineering the past 2 years. I've started engineering my food and my exercise a lot. And I'm actually doing much better. Like little changes that you keep, like instead of making dramatic big changes, just make little sustainable changes. And like experiment with food, experiment with working out, and life really does get better. Because sometimes you see these people and you're like, oh, this person exercises and they eat well, and they also have like they do well in their job, and like how is that even possible? I think when you have kids, it's a different story. I'm not going to talk about things I don't understand, but I think a lot of times when you start fixing one thing, like when your food is good and then you start sleeping better, and then in the few hours that you work, you're more productive, and it does snowball from there. So I think it's important to think about these meta things in life as well. And I think I personally started thinking about them later in life. And it's good to just start like one tiny step of I'm going to have more fiber today or more protein, and that would be good, or like less sugar or whatever. Yeah.
No, it's a great advice.
So
Thank you so much that you joined us
thanks.
today. It was
Thank you
really
for having
pleasure
me.
to talk with you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
No, this is really
And
fun. Thank you.
Maybe
great.
next
And
time we'll talk about the evils of sugar.
okay, and thank you for the audience. See you next time. Bye.